Beyond the Mic with Sean Dillon.
We're joined on the Starline by a truly talented man. He's done A&R, educator, music publishing, podcaster, and serves as a board member for the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Season 5 of his podcast, Rock and Roll High School, is now out. We welcome Grammy Award winner Pete Ganbarg.
Hi.
Pete, let's go beyond the mic. For Season 5 of Rock and Roll High School, you've gotten a who's who of talent. Alice Cooper, Kevin Cronin, Darlene Love, and so much more. Why was it important, especially A&R staff, to understand the roots of contemporary music?
I think that it all goes back to why we're all here in the first place. Anyone who loves music, there's a whole generation of people who have helped build the building blocks of the soundtrack of what everyone has listened to their whole lives. When I was running A&R at Atlantic Records for the last 16 years, I realized that my young staff there didn't know anything about the history of music. Their history of music basically started maybe with the first Kanye West album. And I had to tell them that, no, guys, you got to go all the way back. I'll cut you a break. We could start in the 50s at the birth of the rock era in 1955. But I started teaching class, and I started literally lecturing on, this is Chuck Berry, this is Buddy Holly, this is, Little Richard, these are the Everly Brothers. And they liked it. They just had never been exposed to it before. So one thing led to another. I started bringing in guests to speak to the Atlantic Record staff and the Warner Music Group staff. Then COVID happened, and I was asked to continue the interviews online, do them virtually, and the entire Warner Music Group globally would have the opportunity to join in on the Zoom and listen to what these legends had to say. And that led to the podcast, Rock and Roll High School. We're already 75 episodes in, and we're rolling. And it's great because it allows me to learn more about the history of some of the people that I would have loved to know more about. And just for whatever reason, there's so many hours in the day, have never really spent time with their music. For our listeners and even for myself, it's been a great opportunity.
You're sharing the stories of contemporary music via the artist's own words. Which episode revealed something that even shocked you?
I think that I worship as a record executive and as a music publisher and as a songwriter's advocate. I worship at the altar of the songwriter. Mm-hmm. So to have been honored to speak with some of the most iconic songwriters of all time, the great Lamont Dozier from Holland Dozier Holland at Motown Records with, 35 plus number one hits.
Wow.
I had the privilege of speaking to him before he passed away. And we did that interview in person, and we took him out to dinner afterwards. And I brought my entire A&R staff, maybe around 15, 20 people in LA, to dinner. And he literally called each one over separately, one by one, and talked to each of them for 10 or 15 minutes, one-on-one, telling them about what he's learned in the business. And, the cameras weren't on. He was just doing it to give back and pay forward. That was an amazing experience.
Who's the most underrated songwriter of all time?
When you ask somebody who do you think is the greatest songwriter of all time? They may say Lennon and McCartney. They may say Bob Dylan. They may say Springsteen. Mm-hmm. For me, those are all great answers. They may say Holland Dozier Holland. They may say the great Gamble and Huff from Philadelphia. For me, it's more of unsung guys like Paul Williams, who wrote The Rainbow Connection for Kermit the Frog and Love is Soft as an Easy Chair for Barbra Streisand, from Stars Born. Guys like that, guys like Jimmy Webb, who for me are, should be on the Mount Rushmore of songwriting royalty. Jimmy Webb wrote what I consider to be the greatest song ever written, which is a song called Wichita Lineman, recorded by Glenn Campbell. And that song is so just next level great that there's actually a book that has been written just about the song. It's called Searching for the Wichita Lineman. And it's like a 300-page book just about how great this song is. And I read it, and I concur.
You say music changes you. What was the first album you bought, and how did it change your life?
Well, I have an older brother, and I was always kind of snooping around his record collection. And then we were once in the record store, I think when I was around 12 years old. And I'm not sure why I purchased the album I purchased, but the first album that I purchased with my own money was an album called Stranger in Town by Bob Seger. It was the follow-up album, The Night Moves. And songs like Feels Like a Stranger and Hollywood Nights and songs like that. I remember I played it so much, not because, oh my God, I'm the biggest Bob Seger fan in the whole world. He's great. But I think at that point, I just wanted to immerse myself in that album experience. And I played it so much that it literally broke and I couldn't play it anymore. So I had to go out and buy another one.
Host of Rock and Roll High School, Pete Ganbarg, joins us for the Rocky Need. 8 random questions. Just trust your first instinct. Pete, no pressure. Broadway show you ever saw live?
Last night. I saw a show. It's actually off Broadway, if that's okay. I saw a show called Anna Christie, directed by the great Tommy Kail, who directed Hamilton, starring his wife, Michelle Williams, and the great Brian Darcy James. Saw it last night in Brooklyn.
Who would you want to sing a song you've written?
I mean, the greatest singers of all time for me are Aretha Franklin, Frank Sinatra, and Barbra Streisand. One of them. And Karen Carpenter.
Karen Carpenter. Oh, wow. Do you know where your first Grammy is right now? Had to have it right in front of you. Some people would have used them for doorstops.
Not me. I was never good at baseball, but I finally have a trophy case. Thank you.
Best place to go on vacation?
I was just in Aruba. It was fantastic. Very hot.
What was the name of your show on WESU?
I did many of them. Mm-hmm. WESU is my college radio station at Wesleyan University. And back when I was in college, it was run in what's called a block formatted format, which means that every few hours you would hear a different type of music, not free form where you could hear any type of music anytime, but from, 7 to 9 in the morning, it was, rock and roll to wake up to. From 11 to 2 was classical. From 2 to 6 was jazz. From 6 to 9 was R&B and hip hop. My goal when I got there was to do every single show. And I did. So I was the hip hop guy, I was the punk rock guy, and I was even the bluegrass guy on Saturday mornings. So somewhere there are tapes.
Best New York Mets game you've ever seen live?
Oh my goodness. Probably the playoffs, 1986 with the Houston Astros, Game 6.
What was the best home-cooked meal from growing up, and who made it?
Definitely my mom. Probably meatloaf.
Pete, what's the best thing about being a girl dad to Perry and Julia?
Well, I love my kids. Julia just turned 26 this week. Perry, Julia follows after her mom. Her mom is a social worker. Julia's an occupational therapist. Perry follows after me. I'm an A&R guy. Perry is a theatrical talent agent, and she represents actors and actresses for Broadway. This past year, one of her clients won the Tony Award for Best Featured Performance in a Broadway Musical for a show called Buena Vista Social Club, and she thanked my daughter Perry on television. So when I heard that, I'm like, my work here is done.
It's time for the impossible question with Pete Ganbarg beyond the mic. Pete, who's on your Mount Rushmore of songwriters?
It's definitely Jimmy Webb. It's definitely Gamble and Huff. It's definitely Lamont Dozier, and it's definitely Paul Williams.
Host of Rock and Roll High School podcast, Pete Ganbarg, joins us for the back half. Pete, how has streaming and social media made finding artists easier and yet harder for A&R reps?
When I started this, the barrier to entry was really, really high. If you wanted to create music and have people hear it, you would have to go into a recording studio. You would have to have the money to pay for the studio time. You would have to figure out how to find more money to duplicate your recording. And then you would have to figure out how to get it into a brick and mortar physical store to sell it. Now, all you really need is a phone. And, you can burp into the phone and upload it, or have AI burp for you and upload it. And there is no barrier to entry anymore. So in one respect, there are no secrets because every musical release is there at the click of a button for anyone to find, unlike, how hard it was to find music a few decades ago when I started out. The problem is that quantity doesn't equal quality. So you're, seeing hundreds of thousands of songs uploaded daily. if 0.0001% of those songs end up to be viable, that's a lot. But now it's playing more needle in a haystack than it is trying to find, something you're hearing about. If you've heard about it, it's there, but so are 10,000 other things.
In 90s country, once you had a hat act, everyone was searching for a hat act. Once LeAnn Rimes came out, you had Lila McCann and Jessica Andrews. As music has evolved, how have trends kept up?
I think that with trends, there is nothing new. Every trend is in some way recycled, it's an old idea in a new outfit, right? When I was a kid, we grew up in my family taking long rides in the car and listening to 8-track tapes of Broadway cast albums like a chorus line, right? Fast forward 10 years ago, nobody was doing that. Obviously, nobody listens to 8-track tapes anymore. But I always thought, hey, a generation ago, we all listened to Broadway. So why can't this generation listen to Broadway? They will if it's the right project. So I brought a show that I thought was the right project into Atlantic Records around a decade ago, and it worked. And it was it was an old idea and done in a newfangled way. And that was Hamilton. And now it's the best-selling Broadway cast album of all time. So there's no such thing as a new idea. Any crazy idea that's working now has probably worked before. One of the biggest songs of the year is from an animated television movie called K-Pop Demon Hunters, a song called Golden. Everyone's like, when was the last time there was an animated group who had a hit? Well, you remember Sugar Sugar by the Archies? Nothing is new, You just have to know your history so you'll be able to spot something that is repeating itself.
First Broadway show I ever saw was at Jones Beach.
Jones Beach did Broadway shows? I did not know that. What show was it?
I can't remember it right now, but I will.
Okay.
What was the first concert you saw live?
It was actually, again, similar to my Bob Seger experience. It was like, oh, there's a concert. Let me get a ticket. Not because I liked or loved the band. I just wanted to have my, 12, 13-year-old concert experience. So it was Loverboy with the great Long Island band, speaking of Jones Beach, Zebra, opening up for them. Actually, Zebra was from New Orleans, but then relocated to Long Island.
As you have these conversations with stars such as Warren Haynes, Clive Davis, Peter Frampton, and so much more, how important is it for you capturing their stories before they're gone?
Oh, it's so important. Like I said, we're around 75 episodes in, and there are already, a handful of guests who have passed away. Like Steve Cropper recently passed away. We had him on our show. The great Lou Christie, Lightning Strikes, was on our show. He passed away. Lamont Dozier, who we mentioned, passed away. Unfortunately, before I started recording these interviews, I did some interviews with some incredible people, never recorded. They've passed away. I interviewed Michael Lang, who created Woodstock. He's no longer with us. I interviewed Denny Lane from the Moody Blues and Wings with Paul McCartney. He's no longer with us. So it's very, very important to capture their stories in their voices for posterity. And that's something we're trying to do every week.
Pete, what's the one overarching thing you want people to take away from Rock and Roll High School?
I think you have to understand where we've been musically to appreciate where we're going. And these people have incredible stories to tell. Anyone who has created music, whether as an artist, as a producer, as an executive, as a songwriter, it is so hard to succeed with music. All of these people have been part of a song or an album or a group that everybody knows. That's really, really hard. So I would love for people to go to our show, Rock and Roll High School, pick one episode, and you will learn a ton. And what's great about it is that it's all types of music. You like R&B? Great. Listen to Shaka Khan. You like or listen to the great Eddie Levert from the OJs, or listen to Otis and Ron from the Temptations. You like, punk rock? Listen to Tony Visconti, a great producer, produced David Bowie and Mark Bolan and T-Rex. These stories, just you could almost like close your eyes and point your finger, and any episode you will learn something, I promise.
Who in the music business now has that it factor? And now I'm not talking about artists. I'm talking about behind the scenes.
I think anyone who is able to figure out what the public wants to listen to before they want to listen to it, that is really, really hard. There's an artist right now named Olivia Dean from England who is exploding, probably the biggest new artist story of the year. Just sold out 6 Madison Square Gardens, probably not even 25 years old. And she was discovered by a great A&R person in London named Joe Charrington. Joe is the president of Capitol Records in London, and she signed Sam Smith. But nobody would know her name. These are the invisible fingerprints behind the hits, people like that keeping it going.
Why are those invisible people behind the scenes sometimes more important in the industry?
Because I think that our job, nobody really knows what an A&R person does. An A&R person, A&R stands for artists and repertoire. We're responsible for finding the artists and making sure that they are recording the best material, the repertoire, the R. And you have to have an understanding of what, like I said before, what the audience is going to want to hear even before they know that they're going to want to hear it. And that is not easy.
Yep.
Using a baseball analogy, right? The greatest baseball hitter of all time still made an out 6 out of 10 times, right? And that person is in the Hall of Fame, the greatest of all time. If an A&R person signs 10 things and 3 of them are successful, that means 7 have failed, but they're still batting 300 and they're in the conversation for the Hall of Fame. It's very, very difficult.
So who's the most underappreciated artist in your opinion right now?
Oh, there's so many. Like I said, if I sign 10 acts and 3 of them do something, that's a lot. So if I've signed, over 100 acts in my career and 3 out of 10 have done something, that's 30 that have done something and 70 that haven't. 70 artists who are really, really talented. And for whatever reason, it zagged when it should have zigged. But when I'm signing them, they all have the potential to be the biggest artist in the world, or else I wouldn't sign them. If we all knew what was going to work, we'd be at the track all day, betting a trifecta and doing this podcast from my yacht.
Just remembered, it was the pajama game.
Oh, I love the pajama game. I was Sid Sorokin in the 1978 Camp Kendall version of the pajama game. There you go.
That's where my love of entertainment began. I got my first playbill at Jones Beach.
Yep.
How hard is it to pick for the Songwriters Hall of Fame?
Well, talk about repertoire, right? Talk about the Great American Songbook and great repertoire. Some of the greatest songs of all time have come from Broadway musicals. There's a song written by a songwriter named Jerry Ross, another songwriter named Richard Adler, in the 50s called Steam Heat. That's a standard, and that came from the pajama game. So, the repertoire, the songs. Today, we announced the new inductees into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. You mentioned earlier, I'm a board member. It is such a great honor to be voted on by your peers, to be among the Mount Rushmore of songwriters. Today, we inducted Taylor Swift. We inducted, we announced for induction. They'll be inducted in June. But, Taylor Swift, Kiss, Kenny Loggins, Alanis Morissette, the great Tricky Stewart, who wrote Umbrella for Rihanna, Terry Britton and Graham Lyle, who wrote What's Love Got to Do with It for Tina Turner, Walter Afanasieff, who wrote All I Want for Christmas Is You with Mariah Carey. It's going to be an amazing night. And these are the people who should be celebrated, the songwriters who are writing the songs. And again, some of these names, the Britton and the Lyle and the Walter A's and the Tricky Stewarts may be invisible, but, they are so worthy. And I'm so thrilled that we get to induct them in June into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Once we figure out who's going to be on the slate, we open it up to our membership. They vote, and their vote is final.
How many members do you put out on a ballot?
They're usually around 20 to 25 on the ballot every year. We only induct around 6, 7, or 8 per year. So there are a lot of very worthy songwriters who hopefully next year or the year after will be inducted as well.
So, Pete, who's your dream guest for Rock and Roll High School?
Elton John, Paul McCartney. If you know him, put in a good word.
Your artists have sold a combined 100 million plus units. Who's the one star that still has that special place in your heart?
I mean, there are a lot of them. Probably the most special project that I've worked on in my career was with the legendary record executive Clive Davis, my mentor, and probably, one of the greatest record executives who's ever lived. I started working for him in 1997. He had just signed the great Carlos Santana to a new record contract at Arista Records when I started working there. But neither Clive nor Carlos knew what kind of record they wanted to make. I was the new guy. I had the time to kind of blueprint it out in my office, and I came up with an idea that if we had paired Carlos with young artists who grew up on his music, we could get both fans. We could get the parents and the kids, and we could get Carlos back on the radio, which is what he wanted to do. And we were successful. That album, Supernatural, is now one of the best-selling albums of all time. And the first single, Smooth, is one of the biggest songs of all time. And that all happened out of my office. It was awesome. What a great experience. I was just, honored to be able to play a part in that project.
How has the music industry declined since the shift of streaming and the loss of revenue for artists?
I think that everything shifts. There's a lot more money in touring now, so that if an artist is able, it used to be that the tour sold the records. Now the records sell the tour. And an artist will put out music. If it streams well enough for people to hear it, they will go buy a ticket. Once they have a ticket, they can buy a T-shirt. That's where the artists are making a lot of their money right now.
It's time for One Big Question with Pete Ganbarg from the Rock and Roll High School podcast. Pete, how do you see the future of music with Suno and other AI changing the reality of, is it real or is it not?
I think ultimately there's only one opinion that matters when it comes to releasing music. The only opinion that matters is the public's. Public does not care if it was made with a 100-piece orchestra or if it was made with AI. They just want a song that they love and want to listen to over and over and over again. I think AI, when used correctly, will just be another tool in the toolbox of creativity, the way that sampling was, the way that interpolation was. It's just you can't bottle technology. I think we have to make sure that everything is properly licensed, but ultimately it's going to open up new creative avenues to creators. I think it's very exciting.
How has doing this podcast changed you?
I think it gives me a lot more appreciation of the work that goes in to the music that we all take for granted. Some of these artists took years and years and years, sometimes decades, to become successful. And you wouldn't know that just turning on the radio or, listening to your streaming service and hearing your favorite song. You don't know the real stories behind it. And that's what this podcast is aiming to do.
Where can people listen to the Rock and Roll High School podcast and find you online?
Anywhere. Rockschoolpodcast.com is our website, but you can find Rock and Roll High School with Pete Ganbarg in our 5th season now, wherever you listen to podcasts.
His favorite Mets game was Game 6 of the '86 World Series, Mrs. Mom's Meatloaf. He wants you to hear the Rock and Roll High School podcast wherever you find podcasts. Pete Ganbarg, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you. This was great.
And that, my friends, is Beyond the Mic. If you're enjoying these conversations, please check out another Beyond the Mic episode to find more actors, artists, and people you need to know. We'd also appreciate a like and subscribe on the Good Pods app.